And joining us for an in-depth conversations on the matter is from the Center for Strategic International Studies, or CSIS, researcher Pieter Pandie, sharing us with the impact and also the implications of President Saissi's death on domestic politics and geopolitical landscape. Pieter, thank you very much for taking your time to talk to us on the program. On to my first question.
Hello,
to
thank you as well.
What do you think is the most prominent impact of the appointment of Vice President Mohamed Mokhber as acting president on the political stability of the country?
Well, the appointment of the vice president is just part of the Constitution. I think the most telling impact will be in the coming few weeks or months in the future, depending on the political stability of the Iranian regime, as well as questions of who will succeed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in the future. Because President Ibrahim Raisi was one of the two or several people who was poised to be one of the successors. The other would be the son of Ali Khamenei himself. And his death would definitely release questions and lead to jockeys of power on who would succeed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in the future.
Well, Pieter, by law, Iran will have to elect new presidents within 50 days. What do you think are the long-term implications of Raisi's death on the country's leaderships and ways for them to move forward, finding the figure for the top job in merely 50 days?
Right. Well, Raisi's death raises the prospect of, as I said before, renewed jockeying for the position of president and later as well as for the supreme leader position. This doesn't necessarily guarantee the rise of the person seen as Raisi's chief rival, which is Khamenei's son in this case. As to my understanding, there's a resistance of inheritance of power in Iran. Previously, before Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader was the founder of the Islamic Republic, who served from 1979 until 1989, and then Ali Khamenei himself has served in the supreme leader role since 1989 to present. So there will be deep differences between factions domestically in Iran, and I think Raisi's death will lead to competition for that. In the near term, as I said, principal impacts will be domestic, but the coercive power for grand strategy and the political landscape domestically in Iran still lies in the supreme leader, not the president. Still, Raisi was a trusted partner and ideological partner to the establishment and to the Ayatollah himself. And in fact, many expected him to be running in as first supreme leader after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei leaves the scene.
Right. Pieter, the late President Ibrahim Raisi has long been regarded as the the dark horse, if we must say, the most prominent successor to the supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran, at least. Now you say that the son of Ayatollah himself might be in contention to take this positions of presidency of Iran. How do you think the figure of the next top leader of Iran will impact its relations with neighboring countries and also domestically?
It's hard to say, but I do believe that given the long tenure that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has had as supreme leader of Iran, that he set a lot of precedents and pillars of Iranian foreign policy, which has included the axis of resistance, which has the effort to court China and Russia to sort of repel Western influence in the Middle East, and for also greater regional dialogue. I think those things will remain unchanged in a future administration. Although the latter, which is greater regional dialogue with partners, particularly with Arab states, is likely to suffer with the death of the foreign minister, who was a seasoned diplomat and an Arabic speaker who had spent years cultivating relationships amongst Iran's Arabic neighbors and earned a small degree of trust, especially with states in the Gulf region. Amid uncertainty of who will replace him and who will be the next president, it will take some time to rebuild these ties in the future, as was the case with the death of Qassam Soleimani a few years later after the targeted killing on the behalf of the U.S. While it was a big blow to the Iranian regime for its security grand strategy in the region, because the institutions and strategy was already in place, those plans continued.
Yeah. Will it also impact, in your opinion, its relations with United States in particular, especially with all of the sanctions that have been imposed upon Iran in the past?
Well, there have been questions regarding the role of the U.S. or perhaps even Israel in their deaths. It's been a point of discussion on public discourse, on social media, and I believe it's been incited on some news platforms as well.
Yeah.
But it's my understanding these claims are so far speculation, as there is no verified information regarding the U.S. or Israel's role. However, the timing of their deaths and the fact that there has been a precedent for targeted killings from the U.S. or Israel towards Iran, as was the case with Qasem Soleimani, could very well, in my opinion, add or intensify the already tense relations between Iran and the U.S. Some may use the timing and circumstances of their deaths to cast blame on the U.S., as has been seen on the discussions about sanctions, and perhaps to distract from what, in my opinion, is the very real social and economic ails that Iran faces domestically. I think the case is almost pretty clear-cut. There isn't much debate that it was an accident. The helicopter, I believe, was a very old one. It was purchased reportedly prior to the Islamic Revolution, prior to 1979, which means that it's very old, and the weather conditions that the president flew in also weren't at best. So these speculations so far are unfounded, in my opinion.
Right. It is also unfortunate, Pieter, that this accident took place in the midst of the escalating tensions in Middle East, and that is to say, the recent escalations between Israel and Iran, bringing Israel into the picture of this accident. Although the government of Israel has stated that they have nothing to do, they are not involved in any way of the accident. What's your analysis on the incident, on how the involvement of Iran, if it's in any way involving Iran or Israel, I should say?
It's unlikely, but not impossible, obviously. As I said, information that has come out both from international sources and I think also Iran state media is that it was, in fact, an accident. Raisi certainly had a lot of enemies, both foreign and domestic. Iran has a lot of enemies, both regional and international, but the extremely poor weather that hampered also rescue efforts, immediate rescue efforts to locate the helicopter at the crash site, is a reasonable explanation for the accident and a hard element for potential plotters to predict. As I said before, I think it bears looking at the equipment that the president was flying in. It was a U.S.-built helicopter that was purchased decades ago, prior to the 1979 Iranian Revolution, and the poor weather conditions in the region added to that. So, yeah.
Right. Pieter, do you think that the change of top leadership in Iran will in any way affect the bilateral relations between Iran and Indonesia?
As I said before, the grand strategy of Iran's foreign policy is set by the supreme leader, which is a life tenure.
Yeah.
Supreme leader of Iran serves as head of state, the president serves as the head of government, and the head of government, the president, must ultimately still answer to the supreme leader. There have only been two supreme leaders in Iran since its founding in 1979. Ali Khamenei has served as second in Iran's history since 1989. As such, while the loss of the president and foreign minister is significant, obviously, and very tragic for Iran's domestic political stability, but it is unlikely to change the overall trajectory of Iran's relations with Indonesia, particularly in the short term, as this is still determined under the direction of the supreme leader. In my view, collaboration between Indonesia and Iran in various sectors such as energy, technology, or defense is likely to continue, barring any significant change in grand strategy or strategic priorities in Indonesia or in Iran. This is because the institutions and treaties to facilitate cooperation have already been set. And I think many countries in the region and also globally view Indonesia as an important strategic partner if it wishes to increase its sort of diplomatic footprint in the Southeast Asia. I don't think these deaths change how these countries view Indonesia, and their engagement with us would continue.
Just one final question to you, Pieter. How do we step up our bilateral cooperations between Indonesia and Iran during the transitional periods of leadership in Iran?
I think Indonesia should continue to cultivate its diplomatic, economic, social, and defense ties with the Middle East region, not just with Iran, but also with the broader region. As I said before, Indonesia is rightly viewed by many as a strategically important nation in Southeast Asia and the broader Indo-Pacific. And as such, we need to cultivate and establish strategic ties and cooperation where we can, whether that be with the Middle East or beyond. Has been the case with developing countries, we will seek to cash in on investment as well as cooperation on ties in sectors such as energy, technology, or defense for the development and for the pursuit of our national interests. Conversely, the Middle East, while also geographically quite far from Indonesia, is important too for Indonesia to invent in its diplomatic and strategic ties, especially true given the region's social and economic importance, not to just Indonesia, but also to many of the world.
Right, researcher for Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS. We're going to have to leave it there, our conversations. Pieter, Pandie, thank you very much for your insights on the program.
Thank you.